Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire. Did
start off talking about coronavirus. This is the one issue that the country is focused on, despite what President Trump would like to talk about, with job loss, with death, with new cases, worries about a spike coming in the fall and the winter. Here's what the president and former Vice President Joe Biden had to say.
We're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace, but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that.
He says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it.
And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Simply not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open.
And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone.
Here's the truth about that. Over the past week in Florida, there have been an average of 2,986 cases per day, an increase of 26% from the average just 2 weeks earlier. In Texas, at least 99 new coronavirus deaths and 6,426 new cases were reported on October 21st. Over the past week, there have been an average of 5,444 cases per day. That's an increase of 16% from the average 2 weeks earlier. And in the state of Arizona, there have been an average of 898 cases per day over the past week, an increase of 55% from the average 2 weeks earlier. Those stats according to the New York Times. So Joe, really, this has been for 8 months. This has been the approach. It's shocking to see it in the last presidential debate. Effectively, the same case that he's been making since February and March is that it's going to go away. We're going to wish it away. We're rounding the corner. If he closes his eyes and covers his ears, hopefully when he opens them, it will be gone. There's no strategy, and that's the case Joe Biden made last night.
Well, and in years past, in every presidential campaign of our life, if a president lied, forget about all the times Donald Trump lied. He lied about the laptop. He lied about the deal. Well, the Wall Street Journal proved that he was lying about it. And he lied about these spikes. He said, the spike has gone away in Florida. You just showed numbers that proved that's a lie. The spike just went away in Texas. You just showed numbers that proved that was a lie. He claimed the spike had ended in Arizona. You showed numbers that proved a lie. In campaigns past, If Barack Obama or Mitt Romney had done this in 2012, there would have been front page articles, not only the New York Times, but Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, USA Today. Everybody would be showing the clips and proving that one of those two candidates lied. Here, Donald Trump lies dozens of times, at least, in a debate. Doesn't get the facts wrong, because that happens sometimes with candidates. He just out and out lies. And it's just become accepted by 46% of the population. It's an extraordinary thing. And what's so extraordinary, Willie, is that I grew up in a Washington where Republicans tore off their robes and put on sackcloth and ashes for 6 months and whipped themselves in the back because Bill Clinton once said, "It depends on what the meaning of is." My God, what a devolution this Republican Party has made.
Yeah, and they've just built it in now, right? They baked it into the cake. This is who he is. What do you want us to do about it? And I would just suggest that learning to live with it is not a strategy. And people are learning to live with it in the short term. They're getting their kids through school online. They're trying to figure out how to make ends meet. But they don't want to do it indefinitely. And the way we're going right now, without a plan, it's headed that way.
It is Friday, the 23rd of October of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, we got a weekend ahead of us, and we had the debate last night. Oh, wasn't Trump? He was so civil. Yeah, he was still a madman. They had him on lewds or something. But his insanity, and I mean that in a pejorative way, not in any sort of medical analysis, please. It was on full display once again, and lie. I don't know if he actually told a truth, an actual fact. The lies come in such deluge after a while, you just let it go. You can't fact check it in time. It's just coming on so hot and heavy. Yeah. So 3.5 million from China into Joe Biden's pockets? Nah, never happened. Never happened. But the reason Trump's going China, China, China is because he's got a lot of illegal activities going on with China. And he knows it. They all project. I would suggest, I really would, I would suggest that certain government entities, maybe the IRS, hopefully the DOJ when we get Bill Barr impeached, go after Trump's remaining brothers, and maybe his sister too. Because I think there's some nefarious things going on with those family members now that Trump has been accusing Biden's brothers. They always project. So I want to know what Trump's brothers are up to, because if Biden's brothers are being accused of wrongdoing, it only means one thing. Okay? That's the world we live in. And if that's reading between the lines, I guess we'll just have to read between the lines. We don't need to anymore. We shouldn't have to. We should just be able to have, say, like someone in a leadership position say, you know what? This virus is really bad, and we better start doing something about it, and we better get serious. Instead of lying for whatever monetary gain, political power, whatever it was that caused this idiot to lie about a virus so that hundreds of thousands of people are infected and are dying, because we have a couple of hundred, going on 300,000 dead. it was all for craven whatever. Yeah. So I don't want to hear about the Biden crime family. I don't want to hear any bit of it at all. When we have already a well-known crime family who has been criming for decades, out in the open, flaunting it, and we all laughed. Isn't that great? Boy, he was like the Teflon Don. They get on TV, and they don't seem so bad. You look at the leg breakers in Trump's orbit, like that Schiller guy, that former NYPD, the big skinhead cop. Well, not big. He's tall. Rangy. I think he could do some damage. But, he's rangy. Yeah, you look at those leg breakers, and then you look at the leg breakers in the Biden, quote, crime family, unquote. And they're a bunch of little kids. Literally little kids. So I suppose in this Trump world, they are so frightening. Oh, those are scary leg breakers. Oh. And we got to get rid of all of them, I guess. I mean, there's a guy that had bombs and guns and a plan and Google searches and all of it, who just got busted because he wanted to assassinate Joe. And why did he want to assassinate Joe? Trump told him to. Yeah, you've got a lot of lone wolves. Well, hell, it looks like in Michigan they have how many now? Over a dozen lone wolves all working together? Boy, these lone wolves sure come in packs. All right. Did you know Bill Barr plays the bagpipes? Of course you do. When everybody else was listening to Cream and the Jefferson Airplane, this was way before they were the Starship, Bill Barr put on a kilt and started playing the bagpipes just to spite people. Yeah, somebody who went to school with him reminded us of that, because I do remember him playing the bagpipes at some DOJ government event, and yeah, I guess a few people were, I don't know, taken aback. I would. So, are we going to impeach Bill Barr? Is that going to be what holds up the seating of Amy Coney Barrett? I would think that anybody who was installed in the Oval Office by a hostile foreign power, whatever they did, whatever financial doings that they did, whatever political doings that they did, should be undid. I would think there should be a form of civil asset forfeiture. It's all property, isn't it? Property is king in this country. Property is more important than brown baby lives. Okay? Way more important. So I would say that each of these nominations, every single one, all through the judiciary, every district court, every appellate court, and I would say the two sitting justices right now, along with the handmaid, all be forfeited, put in escrow, and he can appeal to get them back later. Okay? Then a judge will decide if he gets them or not. Okay? Because I don't think that anybody should be able to capitalize and get some sort of gain from criminal activity. This is America. Why should the whole of the Republican Party gain from the crimes committed by this traitor? And that's what he is. I mean, even Russia, tongue-in-cheek. Do Russians ever do tongue-in-cheek? I don't know. I think the humor's a little bit more pointed and a little bit more dark than that. But they are already opining, maybe tongue-in-cheek, is the Russian asset coming home? Is he going home to Mother Russia? Will he get his high-rise with his name on it Yeah, I'm sure he will, and they'll probably be taken up to whatever top floor that they'll just happen to call the 5th floor to show him the sign. And conveniently, well, you know what happens next. I mean, it is Putin's Russia, after all. And if Putin doesn't get what he wants, or if someone crosses him, something convenient always happens. Always. And that is what frightens Trump the most. He doesn't fear going to Leavenworth. He doesn't fear going to The Hague. In fact, I would think he would invite it. He's only in the Oval Office now, and he figured out, well, this is my security. So it might be that the only security he has left is in, what are the dimensions of a cell now? 5 by 8? Is it a little bit bigger than that? Well, I know The Hague is a little bigger, especially for, leaders of his stature. He might get a little apartment at The Hague. Otherwise, he can get a flat next to Steven Seagal's flat at Gorky Park. You've heard me push that one before, haven't you? Oh, yes, you have. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here? Because we do have somewhat of a curated show. In fact, we always do. And sometimes we go off curation. Ooh, yeah. Well, of course, at the top, one of the many lies Trump told during the debate was that virus spikes have gone away, and we know they haven't. In fact, in my county, they're spiking again. And they weren't supposed to, but they did, because I actually think that there's something more going on here than just now the Sturgis infections. It could be the effect of the Sturgis infections, and we're seeing the resonant infections from that. That could be the case, but we're getting a lot more cases now. On the rest of the menu, a California appeals court ruled that Uber and Lyft drivers are employees, not independent contractors. Yeah, you violate labor law, you're going to suffer now, aren't you? Yes, you are. A second group of judges blocked Trump's apportionment order. Yeah, that has to do with the census, and Trump doesn't care. He'll just violate it anyway. And Walmart sued the U.S. government in a preemptive strike over its responsibility in the opioid abuse crisis. They're forward thinkers. You know they are. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Spanish lawmakers squashed the far right's attempt to oust Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. And the European Union awarded its top human rights prize to the Belarus opposition movement. That's going to make Lukashenko really happy now, isn't it? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, off to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so. To the leftish of the chat room link that is, well, actually near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com the link to our Patreon page, and that's there because, hey, I got to be honest with you. We need money to pay our bills, purchase this machinery that we have been purchasing, actually, bits here and there, and we're going to make the big purchases in a few weeks because that's how it's going to work. And anyway, we need to purchase those and get the software and pay our bills as well so that we can fly under the radar and continue resisting as the founders originally intended. Now, we've been able to do so because of the generosity of a few of you over all these many years, and we thank you, and we especially thank those who have, in these times of peril, increased their monthly pledge. How dare you? But thank you. Oh, my gosh. And anyway, this is a representative democracy, and, we like to spread it. It's better to spread it around rather than put it on the shoulders of a few. So if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and you could, like I said, in these times of peril, only if you're able to. But if you are, send those funds our way, and we will stretch those dollars really beyond compare because we're quantum mechanics that way. We leave no quantum filament unstretched. And then, as I mentioned, we pay our bills and we fly under the radar and continue resisting. And we've been able to get away with it for almost 10 years now. We're coming up on 10 years of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance radio. Wow. Is that dedication? Or is that just momentum and we don't know how to stop? Could be all of it. It is the world, after all. Anyway, thank you for being so generous all these years. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it really is so simple because Tom put it together and he does it. And you can find us at Netroots Radio. How simple is that? You can follow me on Twitter, and you might as well because I post the show notes and links diary at Justice Putnam. After I post them on Daily Coast about 10 minutes before showtime. So, yeah, get those show notes and links that way. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Oh, and I guess I need to remind folks, as far as I know, there's no podcast distributor called etc. Though, you might make some money if you do. Okay, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The French 77s are virtually poured and ready for your virtual imbibing pleasure. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this first offering. A California appeals court yesterday, Thursday, upheld an order requiring Uber and Lyft to treat their California drivers as employees instead of independent contractors less than 2 weeks before voters will be asked to exempt the ride-hailing giants from the state's gig economy law. The decision won't have any immediate impact because it doesn't take effect for at least 30 days, well after the November 3rd vote on Proposition 22. Uber and Lyft, who along with DoorDash have heavily bankrolled the ballot measure, had appealed an August preliminary injunction by a San Francisco judge, but the appellate court found no legal error and allowed it to stand. We conclude that the injunction was properly issued in accordance with enduring principles of equity, the 74-page ruling said. It is broad in scope, no doubt, but so too is the scale of the alleged violations. Uber and Lyft issued statements noting that the ruling doesn't take immediate effect and urging voters to approve Proposition 22. Lyft also said it is considering appealing to the California Supreme Court. Together, the two companies have more than 400,000 drivers in California. One thing that's making especially Uber drivers quite upset is that they've been inundated with recorded messages right in their cars over their location devices that I guess you have to drive for Uber, whatever that is, for the whole car to hear about, past Proposition 22, if you know what's good for you. Yeah. Now, this decision came in a lawsuit filed by California Attorney General Xavier Becerra and the city attorneys of Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco under a new California law that says companies can only classify workers as contractors if they perform work outside the usual course of their business. Treating Uber and Lyft drivers as employees instead of independent contractors would guarantee benefits such as overtime, sick leave, and expense reimbursements for workers who make up much of the freewheeling gig economy. The law has wide-reaching implications across a number of sectors, but none more so than the ride-hailing industry, which are not taxis, by the way. Lawyers for Uber and Lyft say drivers are not fundamental to the business, arguing that the companies are multi-sided platforms whose activities encompass much more than transportation. Oh, really? 400,000 drivers, and you're calling them independent contractors? So you don't have to pay benefits, overtime? Yeah, you violated labor law, and now you will labor under it. Mike Schneider of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. For the second time in 2 months, a panel of federal judges blocked Trump's effort to exclude people in the U.S. illegally from being counted during the process of divvying up congressional seats by state. The decision from a panel of 3 district judges in California went further than last month's ruling by a panel of 3 judges in New York by saying that Trump's order in July not only was unlawful, but also violated the Constitution. The New York judges ignored the question of the order's constitutionality and just said it was unlawful. The Constitution's text, drafting history, 230 years of historical practice, and Supreme Court case law all support the conclusion that apportionment must be based on all persons residing in each state, including undocumented immigrants, the judges in California wrote. Undocumented immigrants. Is that a legal term? The Trump administration has appealed the New York decision to the Supreme Court, and the nation's high court agreed to hear the case next month. Other challenges to Trump's order are pending in Maryland, Massachusetts, and the District of Columbia. Now, of course, Bill Barr and the Department of Justice had no comment and didn't respond because that's just the way they are. The case was heard before a panel of 3 district judges since it deals with how many congressional seats each state gets based on population figures from the once-a-decade census in a process known as apportionment. Wow. Any appeal can bypass an appellate court and go straight to the Supreme Court. One of the judges on the panel, U.S. District Judge Lucy Coe, in a separate case last month, stopped the Trump administration from finishing the census at the end of September. She said the count could go on for another month through October. Department of Justice attorneys appealed to the Supreme Court, which last week allowed the Trump administration to end the census. And D'Innocencio of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Walmart is suing the U.S. government in a preemptive strike in the battle over its responsibility in the opioid abuse crisis. The government is expected to take civil action against the world's largest retailer, seeking big financial penalties for the role its pharmacies may have played in the crisis by filling opioid prescriptions. But yesterday, Thursday, Walmart filed a lawsuit saying that the Justice Department and the Drug Enforcement Administration are blaming the company for the government's own lack of regulatory and enforcement policies to stem the crisis. Oh, do tell. You mean an industry who says they don't want regulatory oversight? Oh, okay, come on, Sam and family. What do you got here? Walmart says it is seeking a declaration from a federal judge that the government has no lawful basis for seeking civil damages from the company. It is also seeking to clarify its legal rights and duties under the Controlled Substance Act. Walmart operates more than 5,000 pharmacies in its stores around the country. Walmart and its pharmacists find themselves in a untenable position, the company based in Bentonville, Arkansas, said in the lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court in the Eastern District of Texas. Under defendant's sweeping view, Walmart and its pharmacies may be held liable, perhaps even criminally, for failing to second-guess DEA-registered doctors and refuse their prescriptions. But if pharmacists do so, they may face the wrath of state medical boards, the medical community at large, individual doctors, and patients. Walmart says in the suit that the Justice Department identified hundreds of doctors who have written problematic prescriptions that Walmart's pharmacists allegedly should not have filled. But nearly 70% continue to have active registrations with the DEA, the lawsuit says. In other words, defendants want to blame Walmart for continuing to fill purportedly bad prescriptions written by doctors that DEA and state regulators enabled to write those prescriptions in the first place and continue to stand by today. The lawsuit names the Justice Department, Attorney General William Barr as defendants. It also names the DEA and its acting administrator, Timothy Shea. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, wow, this could be a really big fight between Walmart and regulatory America. Walmart's asking for more regulatory oversight. Very interesting. Okay, let's get to that break. And when we get back, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, A Dark Journey. The Devil All the Time, out now on Netflix, is the screen adaptation of the 2015 novel of the same name by Donald Ray Pollock. Both could be described as Southern, Midwestern, or maybe even Appalachian Gothic. Religion and its imagery pervade, interwoven with mental illness, violence, and depravity. It's deftly narrated throughout by the author, who was in fact born in one of the two towns where much of the action occurs, the actually real town of Knockemstiff, Ohio. There's a bit of Coen Brothers vibe here, minus the humor. We meet a character, or one of his or her relatives, or maybe a character whose storyline started in the same place, then the characters who enter their stories, and so on. Despite the narration, it is a bit confusing, though it becomes less so as the storylines converge. What stands out in this one are stellar performances across the board, meticulous 1950s set design, and dark, foreboding cinematography that seems to portend every horror. Tom Holland shows his chops in a non-Marvel role as the adult version of Arvin, the closest thing the film has to a protagonist. We get to see Bill Skarsgård without the clown suit as Willard, and in what may be the most intense portrayal, we have Robert Pattinson as the perverse preacher, the Reverend Teagarden. From the grisly opening scene, recapitulated in a scene about midway through, to a comment from Arvin at the end about the possibility of going to Vietnam, there's a literary symmetry to the proceedings. The Devil All the Time, like others of its ilk, can leave you questioning the point of it all, past lurid discovery, but exploration of our dark sides seems never to be invalid at the cinema. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Aged cheeses like Camembert or Taleggio produce a powerful stench, the funk of cabbage, mushrooms, sulfur, even smelly feet.
And those aromas are chemicals that are being kicked off by the cheese. They're being emitted by the cheese. And that's through the microbes that are living in the rind as they slowly decompose the cheese.
Benjamin Wolfe is a microbiologist at Tufts University. He says in addition to alerting our noses to the cheese, the aromas produced by certain microbes living in and on the cheese can feed and sculpt other members of the microbial garden living there. Wolfe and his colleagues identified some of those microbial interactions by growing various cheese-dwelling fungi and bacteria in separate but adjacent dishes in the lab. The microbes couldn't touch. They could only interact via the volatile compounds they released.
And when we did this screen, this volatile screen, we quickly noticed that there was this one bacterium, a Vibrio species, that really loved living in the aromas produced by the various fungi that you find in a typical wheel of Camembert.
Wolfe says the Vibrio bacteria may actually be able to eat the aromas, which, after all, consist of chemical compounds. And the odor of the cheese may also switch on certain genetic pathways in the bacteria, pathways that regulate the bacteria's ability to thrive in harsh conditions.
It's like a backup plan. When things aren't going well and you're starving, you can turn on this other pathway and still make a living, but on less ideal substrates that are around.
The end result is that the stench we perceive may also shape the microbiome of the cheese. The results appear in the journal Environmental Microbiology. As for the practical outcomes of this research, well, it's a little early for that.
We don't necessarily do our science to make cheese better. It's honestly, a lot of it's just to figure out how cheese works.
In other words, he says, the tools of modern microbiology allow scientists to finally listen in to the conversations happening in these tiny cheese rind communities. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Mildred and Richard Loving were charged and then banished from their home state of Virginia for 25 years for violating that state's law that made being a mixed-race couple criminal. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. It was the middle of the 20th century, and the Lovings, who had been married in Washington, D.C., were guilty of violating the state's racist Racial Integrity Act. Mildred Loving described herself as part Negro, part Indian, and her husband was white. The presiding state court judge, Leon Bazile, heartily defended the law when he declared Almighty God made the races, white, black, yellow, Malay, and red, and placed them on separate continents, and but for the interference with his arrangement, there would be no cause for such marriages. Mildred Loving wrote Attorney General Robert Kennedy seeking help, and Kennedy redirected the letter to the ACLU, where ACLU volunteer attorneys Bernard Cohen and Philip Hirschkopf took the Lovings case all the way to the Supreme Court. There, a unanimous court in 1967, in the now famous case of Loving versus Virginia, ruled that the freedom to marry a person of another race resides with the individual and cannot be infringed by the state. Richard Loving died in a car accident in 1975. Mildred Loving passed in 2008. And their attorney, Bernard Cohen, died at age 86 in October 2020. His contribution to equality under the law lives on. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1995. That was the day that the AFL-CIO convention convened in New York City. At the convention, John Sweeney was elected president of the Federation. It was the first contested election for president in AFL-CIO history. He ran with a slate of labor leaders, including Rich Trumka, who called themselves the New Voice Slate. Sweeney was president of the Service Employees International Union. He was a New Yorker born in the Bronx. He started his career in labor working for the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, then moving to SEIU as a union rep. He represented SEIU Local 32B in New York City during 2 strikes of apartment maintenance workers during the 1970s. In 1980, he was elected president of the International SEIU, a post he held for 15 years. Membership in SEIU nearly doubled from 625,000 to 1.1 million under his leadership. Sweeney gave a powerful speech for his candidacy at the convention. He said, quote, "Workers look at their paychecks, the political system, and the public debate and wonder why nobody is speaking for me. Then, in fear and frustration, they look for leadership to the Rush Limbaughs who seek scapegoats rather than solutions for problems of stagnant wages, corporate greed, and a fractured society." He pledged that under his leadership, the AFL-CIO would move to commit more resources to organizing these workers. When he won election, Sweeney held good to his campaign promise. He instituted a new initiative, the Union Summer Program, to involve college students in the labor movement. He expanded organizing efforts in the South and Southwest. John Sweeney served 5 terms as president of the AFL-CIO.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Joe Biden and Donald Trump met on the debate stage for the last time Thursday night. And, well, it was better than the first one. Kristen Welker of NBC did an admirable job as moderator of keeping the thing moving. Trump was on slightly better behavior than at the last one, but that's a pretty low bar. Donald Trump's attempts to link Joe Biden to a conspiracy he's been pushing on Fox and other right-wing media outlets fizzled as he tried to find traction with unsubstantiated and convoluted claims about Biden's son, Hunter, which are not turning into the October surprise Trump and his supporters hoped for. Joe Biden mostly stuck to the issues. The first of the 6 topics discussed was the pandemic. Trump continued to insist it's going away, despite rising cases around the country. In fact, true to form, the very first thing out of his mouth was a lie.
As you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China.
It's a real figure, but Trump falsely describes it, and he's continued to do this at his rallies. Now, what this figure said, it was a report from British academics, and it said that in the U.S., if no U.S. government did anything to mitigate the virus, to fight the virus, and no citizen took social distancing action, then we could see 2 million plus deaths. But this was not an expectation. It was not a realistic estimate. This was a figure put out there to say, this is how bad it gets if you just let this virus run its course, which, of course, the government was not about to do. President Trump was better behaved tonight, but he lied more. This was just a bombardment of dishonesty, much of which we've heard before.
That was CNN's Daniel Dale fact-checking. Joe Biden warned that winter is coming. Okay, he didn't exactly invoke Game of Thrones.
This is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter. And he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no plan.
I don't think we're going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning.
Biden got in a few zingers, including
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America.
Trump's response?
I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does.
Really?
He says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it. And you say, I take no responsibility.
In typical Trump form, Donald denied ever saying, I take no responsibility. Instead, he laughably claimed...
Let me talk about your two...
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that he came here. It's China's fault.
I take full responsibility. It's not my fault. Seriously. Kristen Welker asked about the news story that broke this week, saying that the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children separated from them at the border. She asked, how will these families ever be reunited? Trump responded,
yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Joe Biden?
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? It's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
And then Donald Trump insisted that hundreds of migrant children who were separated from their parents at the border and held in detention centers
They are so well taken care of.
Just stunning. On the subject of race and racism, Donald Trump again insisted
nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done.
Right. Joe Biden had a comeback for that.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire. Every single one. Started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's going to get rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys, last time we were on stage here, he said, I told them to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy has a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
Amazing. The final question was, at your inauguration, what will you say to Americans who didn't vote for you? The difference between the two was stark.
We have to make our country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, etc. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify.
Again, the question was, at your inauguration, what will you say to Americans who didn't vote for you? Joe Biden?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country. Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. Please click that donate button and please vote.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, we did have an extension on that freeze warning, and it is still in effect. Proper measures were taken to protect our delicate plants here at the garden that surrounds the mothership in Rogue River proper. Expecting to be a tad warmer during the day than yesterday. Sunshine and a few afternoon clouds. Highs around 69 to 70. Winds will be light and variable. Lows tonight will be in the mid to upper 40s with cloudy conditions. Winds remaining light and variable. And then cloudy skies early tomorrow, Saturday, followed by partial clearing with highs only about 62. And the winds will remain light and variable. Now, I mentioned earlier that we did have another spike in confirmed coronavirus cases here in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon, where we now stand at 1,584. We're going to be well over 1,600 by Monday. Alas. Well, and the confirmed deceased remain at 6, but as I mentioned before, any type of condition that you may have had that then you died of, brought on by coronavirus, they don't count that as coronavirus. Just saying. Ragweed pollen is moderate right outside the window here at the mothership. The air quality index in the region is good at 23 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at 3. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.15 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 80%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 60 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 66 and partly cloudy. Rome is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 62 and fair. Kabul is 57 and fair. Hong Kong is 72 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 60 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 67 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 65 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Aritz Hara of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Spanish lawmakers overwhelmingly rejected a no-confidence motion called by the far-right Vox party against Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and his left-wing coalition over their handling of the coronavirus pandemic. The motion was rejected by 298 votes and backed only by 52 lawmakers of Vox, which last year became the third largest force in the 350-seat parliament. Spain has reported 1 million confirmed infections, the highest number in Western Europe, and at least 34,000 deaths from COVID-19, although experts say the number is much higher since many cases were missed because of testing shortages and other problems. Opposition leader Pablo Casado announced earlier yesterday, Thursday, that the 88 lawmakers of his conservative Popular Party would vote against Vox's motion and lambasted the far-right party for wasting everybody's time with the debate as the country grapples with the resurgence of the virus. The Popular Party has been very critical of Sanchez's minority government, but Vox's recent rise has come at the expense of Spain's traditional right wing. Many analysts had seen Vox's motion as both an attempt to erode the socialist-led coalition and a direct challenge to Casado, forcing the opposition leader to take a public stance on hot-button issues for the right-wing electorate.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Samuel Petriquin of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The European Union yesterday, Thursday, awarded its top human rights prize to the Belarus opposition movement and its leader, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, for their challenge to Alexander Lukashenko's long, hard-line reign. During a speech at the European Parliament, President David Sassoli praised the Sakharov Prize laureates for their courage, resilience, and determination. They have stood and still stay strong in the face of much stronger adversaries, but they have on their side something that brute force can never defeat. And this is the truth, Sassoli said. The 27-nation bloc agreed this month to impose sanctions against officials suspected of election misconduct and a brutal security crackdown on protesters in Belarus. The EU has warned it is ready to sanction Lukashenko himself if he fails to enter into talks with the opposition and order an end to the repression launched after a disputed election. Well, we'll see how that transpires. Anyway, congratulations. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and of course, the week. You do know, of course, that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Don't forget to vote. Vote early. Vote now. Vote. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.